Ah, 1978, a time when the future felt like it was just around the corner, but we were all still firmly planted in the present. A time of gas lines, yes, but also a time of neighborhood block parties. A time when your car was your castle, and the most sophisticated piece of technology in your home might have been the new microwave oven that cooked a potato in 7 minutes. It was an era of simple certainties. You worked hard at the plant, you loved your family, and on Tuesday nights you went bowling. Our story today begins in just such a place, a temple of polished wood and camaraderie in a working-class suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. But it's a story that proves that even in the most ordinary of lives, secrets can fester, and jealousy can strike with the force of a perfectly thrown ball. That force was gathering on a chilly autumn evening. The neon sign of Cavalier Lanes cast a vibrant red and blue glow across a parking lot filled with the heavy steel of American-made sedans. Inside, the familiar, comforting cacophony reigns, the thunderous crash of pins, the low rumble of returning balls, the cheerful shouts of teammates, and the clinking of beer pitchers. This was the world of Stan Kowalski, and in this world, Stan was a king. At 42, he was a foreman at the Ford assembly plant, a man respected for his firm but fair hand. But here, he was the anchor of the Pin Busters, the league's reigning champions. Tonight, however, Stan was late. His teammates, a trio of fellow factory workers, grumbled good-naturedly over a pitcher of Stroh's. "Stan's never late," said a burly man named Mike. "Must have gotten held up. You know how he is with that Nova of his. Probably polishing the chrome again." They laughed. Stan's mint condition, 1974 Chevrolet Nova, was his pride and joy, a metallic green testament to his meticulous nature. He babied that car more than anything. As the evening wore on, concern began to replace the light-hearted banter. Stan wasn't answering his home phone. Finally, around 10 o'clock, Mike decided to check the parking lot. He spotted the green Nova parked in its usual spot under a flickering fluorescent lamp. He walked over, expecting to see Stan asleep or tinkering with the engine. But the sight that greeted him through the driver's side window made the cold night air freeze in his lungs. Stan was slumped over the steering wheel, unnaturally still. Mike frantically pulled at the locked door handle before using his own car key to rap sharply on the glass. There was no response. The police and paramedics arrived within minutes. At first glance, it seemed a tragic but straightforward case. A man in his early 40s, maybe a bit of a drinker, a bit of a smoker. The initial assessment was a massive heart attack, a sad end to a Tuesday night. The officers were sympathetic, taking statements from Stan's shocked teammates. The scene was processed with a quiet, somber efficiency. "Looks like his time was just up," one of the younger officers remarked to his partner. But then, as the coroner's attendants were carefully removing the body from the car, a seasoned patrol sergeant, a veteran named O'Malley, who had seen too much to accept things at face value, made a final sweep with his flashlight. He was about to close the trunk when something caught his eye. There, nestled next to a spare tire and a set of jumper cables, was a bowling ball. But it wasn't Stan's familiar, scuffed-up ball. This one was pristine. A brand-new, gleaming black Brunswick, its custom-drilled finger holes looking like dark, empty eyes. O'Malley frowned. It was out of place. It was wrong. The quiet hum of the night was suddenly filled with a question mark. In detective work, especially back then, you didn't have databases and DNA profiles at your fingertips. What you had was experience. You had instinct. And you had a gut feeling that was honed by years of walking through crime scenes and listening to the stories, both the spoken ones and the ones that objects told you in silence. A heart attack is a tragedy, but a murder is a violation. It rips a hole in the fabric of a community, and it's a detective's job to find the thread that can stitch it back together, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem. The preliminary coroner's report landed on the desk of Sergeant Frank O'Malley the next morning with a soft thud. O'Malley was a man carved from the rock of the old school. His hair was gray, his face a road map of long nights and too many cups of bad coffee, and his suit, though clean, was permanently rumpled. He read the report, his eyes scanning past the standard information until they landed on the key finding. Single puncture wound, anterior thoracic region, approximately 2 millimeters in diameter. Evidence of fast-acting cardiotoxin. The words transformed the case file. Stan Kowalski hadn't just died. He'd been executed with almost surgical precision. O'Malley leaned back in his squeaky chair, the gears in his mind already turning. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a mugging gone wrong. Stan's wallet, with $63 inside, was still in his pocket. This was quiet. This was planned. He sent his younger, more energetic partner, Detective Miller, to interview Stan's widow while he started with the bowling alley. He needed to understand Stan's world. At Cavalier Lanes, the mood was funereal. The morning league bowled in hushed tones. O'Malley spoke with Stan's teammates again and with members of rival teams. The story was always the same. Stan was a great guy, a tough competitor, sure, but fair. He pushed you to be better. No one could think of a single person who would want him dead. He could be a bit of a hard ass at work, Mike admitted, nursing a coffee. But that was his job. He never held a grudge, and he never brought it here. This place was his escape. Meanwhile, Detective Miller was at the Kowalski home, a neat little brick bungalow with perfectly manicured shrubs. Inside, a distraught Helen Kowalski sat on a plastic-covered sofa, clutching a tissue. She painted a picture of a good husband, a man of routine and simple pleasures. Miller asked about enemies, about debts, about affairs. Helen shook her head vehemently at the last one. Stan? Number he wouldn't. He loved his routine. Work, home, bowling. That was his life. But something in her eyes, a flicker of hesitation, didn't quite match her words. Miller made a note. When O'Malley returned to the station, he found Miller looking over his notes with a frustrated sigh. Nothing, Miller said. No motive, no enemies, no shady dealings. It's a ghost. Not entirely, O'Malley grunted, dropping a clear evidence bag onto his desk. Inside was the gleaming Brunswick bowling ball. The M.E. confirmed no prints on it. Wiped clean, but look at it. Miller peered at the ball. It's just a bowling ball, Frank. No, O'Malley said, his voice low and firm. It's not. Stan's wife confirmed he had one ball, an old ebonite he'd used for 10 years. This one is brand new. And look at the drill holes. They're custom. The span, the pitch, the size. It's like a fingerprint for a bowler's hand. Someone bought this ball, had it drilled, and left it in the trunk of his car. Why? Was it a message? A clue left by accident? I don't know. But I'll tell you this, kid. Our killer isn't a ghost. Our killer is a bowler. Today, we think of a fingerprint as something you leave behind on a glass, a smudge of oil and protein, unique to you. But in 1978, for a certain kind of detective, a fingerprint could be something else entirely. It could be the way a man knotted his tie, the brand of cigarette he smoked, or, in this case, the precise and personal geometry of 3 holes drilled into a sphere of hardened plastic. This wasn't about forensics in a lab, it was about understanding a subculture. To find the owner of this ball, Sergeant O'Malley knew he couldn't rely on science. He had to rely on the craftsmen who made these tools of the game. The investigation, which had seemed to hit a dead end, now had a direction, albeit a long and winding one. Sergeant O'Malley treated the Brunswick ball not as a piece of evidence to be catalogued and filed, but as his primary lead. The first step was to quantify the fingerprint. He took the ball to the pro shop at Cavalier Lanes, a small, cramped room that smelled of resin and industrial solvents. The proprietor, a man named Sal who had been drilling balls since the 1950s, put on a pair of reading glasses and examined the holes with a set of calipers and gauges. "Well, Frank, it's a professional job, I'll give 'em that," Sal said, scribbling numbers on a notepad. "Weight is exactly 16 pounds. The span, from thumb to middle finger, is 4.5 inches. A little bit of forward pitch on the fingers, reverse on the thumb. This is for a guy with a decent-sized hand, but not huge. Knows what he's doing. Wants to get some spin, some hook on the ball." He looked up at O'Malley. "It's not stands, that's for sure. His span was shorter, and he used a conventional grip. Old school." "Did you drill it, Sal?" O'Malley asked. Sal shook his head. "Nope. I use a different press. Leaves a little bevel on the edge of the thumb hole. This is smooth, clean, but I can tell you whoever did this is good." Armed with a sheet of precise measurements, O'Malley and Miller now had their mission. There was no central database of bowling ball specifications. There was no computer to query. Their database was the yellow pages and a map of Ohio. O'Malley drew a 50-mile circle around Cleveland on the map. "We start here," he announced, tapping the center with his finger. "Every bowling alley, every sporting goods store with a pro shop. We're not just looking for who bought a Brunswick ball. We're looking for who drilled this Brunswick ball." Miller looked at the map, then at the list of dozens of potential locations. He let out a low whistle. "Frank, this could take weeks." "Then it takes weeks," O'Malley said, his tone leaving no room for argument. This was detective work at its most tedious and its most human. It was a journey through a world of linoleum floors and the faint smell of shoe sanitizer, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the stubborn belief that the truth was out there, written not in ink, but in fractions of an inch. The Rust Belt. In the late 70s, it wasn't a political catchphrase. It was just life. It was the hum of the factories that put food on your table, the grit in the air you breathed, the pride you felt in building things with your hands. For O'Malley and Miller, their search for a killer became a tour of this world. Each town, each bowling alley, was a new chapter in the same book, a story of hard-working people who found their release and their glory in the simple, thunderous ritual of knocking down 10 pins. The road was long and the trail was cold, but persistence was the only tool they had. The first week of the search yielded nothing but frustration and a growing pile of diner receipts. They drove south to Akron, the rubber capital of the world, its air thick with the smell of industry. They visited Firestone Lanes and Goodyear Pro Bowling, places where the leagues were filled with tire builders and chemists. In one shop, a man with rubber-stained fingers studied their spec sheet for a long time. "Rings a bell," he muttered, scratching his chin. "Drilled a 16-pounder for a fella about a month ago. Similar specs." O'Malley's heart quickened. "You got a name?" The man went to a dusty, grease-stained ledger, flipping through the pages. "Ah, here it is, Becker. Art Becker." The name was a jolt of electricity. They immediately ran it through the system. Arthur Becker, 44, worked as a lab technician at a chemical plant. Clean record, lived in a quiet neighborhood on the west side of Cleveland, and most importantly, he bowled. He was on the roster for the Alley Cats, a team in the same league as Stan Kowalski's Pin Busters. They were rivals, but not particularly fierce ones. The Alley Cats were a perennially average team. Full of cautious optimism, they drove back to Cleveland and straight to the bowling alley where the Alley Cats played. They found Art Becker. He was a small, unassuming man with nervous eyes and glasses that seemed a size too big for his face. He was the polar opposite of the confident, charismatic Stan Kowalski. When O'Malley showed him a picture of the Brunswick ball, Becker just shrugged. "Never seen it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I use a 13-pound Columbia. Always have." They checked his ball. He was telling the truth. The pro shop owner in Akron had been a false lead. The specs were close, but not exact. The disappointment was a bitter pill. Miller tossed the file on the dashboard as they drove away. "A week of driving for a dead end. Maybe the ball is just a red herring, Frank." "No," O'Malley said, his eyes fixed on the road. "A man is dead. A killer wiped this ball clean and left it behind. It's not a herring, it's the whole damn fish. We just haven't found the right pond yet. Their search continued, now tinged with a weary desperation. They pushed the circle on the map wider, out towards Youngstown and the Pennsylvania border. They talked to more owners, each a character study in themselves, cynics, dreamers, old-timers who remembered the days of wooden lanes and human pinsetters. In this quiet, unglamorous pursuit, O'Malley was searching for more than a killer. He was searching for a crack in the facade of a normal life, a place where ordinary frustration had boiled over into something monstrous. He knew it was there. He just had to keep knocking on doors until he found it. In the age before the personal computer, the business ledger was a sacred text. It was a company's memory, its conscience. Every transaction, every name, every dollar was recorded with pen and ink. It was a system built on trust and permanence. You couldn't just hit a delete key to make a problem disappear. A mistake or a clue could be there forever, waiting in faint blue ink for the right person to come along and read it. For Sergeant O'Malley, after weeks of searching, that moment was about to arrive. The trail had led them to a small, dusty sporting goods store in a fading strip mall in Lorraine, a steel town west of Cleveland. The store, Sully's Sport and Tackle, seemed to be a relic from another time, with yellowed advertisements for fishing lures taped to the window. Behind the counter was Sully himself, a man in his late 60s with a shock of white hair and a magnifying glass hanging from a cord around his neck. The pro shop was just a corner of the store, a single drill press surrounded by boxes of shoes and colorful balls. O'Malley and Miller went through their now familiar routine, presenting the spec sheet. Sully adjusted his magnifier and squinted at the numbers. He didn't say anything for a full minute, just hummed to himself. 16 pounds, urethane cover stock, specific pitches, he mumbled. Then he looked up, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Yeah, I remember this one. Not the ball, the hand, the measurements. This is a tricky drill. The reverse pitch on the thumb hole, it's for someone trying to get out of the ball clean, get more rotation. Drilled one just like it. Oh, maybe 3 weeks ago. O'Malley felt that familiar surge of adrenaline, but he tempered it with caution. You remember who for, Sully? Let's see the book, Sully said, reaching under the counter and pulling out a massive heavy ledger. He licked his thumb and began turning the brittle pages, the paper whispering with each turn. Miller leaned in, his own excitement palpable. Sully ran a gnarled finger down a column of names. Kowalski, no. Peterson, no. Ah, here we are. He tapped the page. Becker, Arthur, paid in cash, $75. It was the same name from the Akron Pro Shop, but this time it felt different. Sully's certainty, the specificity of his memory about the drill itself. Are you sure, Sully? O'Malley pressed. We spoke to an Art Becker. He uses a 13-pound ball, Sully scoffed, tapping the ledger again with authority. The book doesn't lie, Sergeant. 16 pounds. Brunswick, custom drill. I remember the guy now, nervous fella, kept wringing his hands, said it was a gift. For his son, he said, to get him into the league. A gift for his son. The detail clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't a case of a mistaken lead. This was a lie. Art Becker had lied to their faces. The meek, unassuming lab tech with the oversized glasses was connected to the murder weapon. The question was why? Why buy a state-of-the-art bowling ball for your son and then lie about it? Why would that same ball end up in the trunk of a murdered man's car? As they drove back to Cleveland, the mood in the car was electric. They weren't just chasing a ghost anymore. They had a name, a face, and a lie. A gift for his son, Miller repeated, shaking his head. Why would he lie about that? O'Malley stared out the window at the passing landscape of factories and modest homes. Because, he said, his voice grim, the gift was never for his son. Or if it was, something went terribly wrong before he could give it to him. We're no longer looking for a motive in a bowling league. We're looking for one in this man's life. The quiet man, the one no one ever suspects, had just become their prime suspect. Jealousy. It's an acid that can corrode the strongest of bonds. It's a quiet poison that works its way into the heart, turning love to resentment and admiration to contempt. In a small, tight-knit community where everyone knows everyone's business, a public humiliation can feel like a mortal wound, and for a man who has little else to cling to, his pride, once shattered, can be impossible to piece back together. The investigation was no longer about a bowling ball, it was about the anatomy of a quiet man's broken heart. With the confirmed link between Art Becker and the murder weapon, the focus of the investigation shifted dramatically. O'Malley and Miller began to dig into the life of the timid lab technician, and the picture that emerged was one of quiet desperation. At the chemical plant where he worked, Becker was described as reliable, meticulous, and pathologically shy. He did his job, ate lunch alone, and went home. He wasn't a man who made waves. The real story, however, was found closer to home. The detectives returned to the Becker residence, this time with a search warrant. Art was at work, but his wife, Sarah, was home. Her earlier evasiveness now gave way to a brittle, defensive anger. As Miller and another officer began a methodical search of the house, O'Malley sat with her in the living room. He didn't ask about bowling balls. He asked about her marriage. He asked about Stan Kowalski. At the mention of Stan's name, Sarah Becker's composure finally cracked. The tears that came were a mixture of grief and guilt. Her story tumbled out, a classic sad tale of neglect and temptation. She described Art as a good man, but a distant one, lost in his own world of anxieties and routines. He was just there, she whispered, like a piece of furniture. Stan Kowalski, on the other hand, was everything Art wasn't: confident, charming, and alive. He paid attention to her at the bowling alley functions, made her laugh. The affair had started 6 months earlier, a series of clandestine meetings in cheap motels. "Did Art know?" O'Malley asked gently. Sarah shook her head. "I don't think so. He never said anything." How could he have known? But O'Malley knew that in a world of shared gossip over backyard fences and at the bowling alley bar, secrets rarely stayed secret for long. In the garage, Miller found what they were looking for. Tucked away on a high shelf behind a stack of old newspapers was a small, locked metal box. A locksmith opened it back at the station. Inside, it didn't contain money or valuables. It contained a syringe, still in its sterile packaging, and a small glass vial containing a clear, viscous liquid. The pieces were now falling into place with terrifying speed. The lab confirmed the substance in the vial was a concentrated form of potassium chloride. It was a chemical Art Becker had easy access to at the plant where he worked. When injected directly into the bloodstream, it would induce cardiac arrest almost instantly, leaving behind only a tiny, almost invisible puncture wound. The motive was no longer a mystery. It wasn't about a league championship. It was about the most ancient motive of all. Art Becker, the meek, invisible man, had discovered his wife's affair with the local king, Stan Kowalski. The bowling ball, that brand new Brunswick, was a tragic footnote. It was likely an earnest, pathetic attempt by Art to connect with his own son, to give him a gift and perhaps share a hobby, even as his family life was disintegrating. It was a symbol of the life he was trying to build, just as Stan Kowalski became the symbol of everything that was destroying it. An interrogation room is a stage, a simple, stark stage where the final act of a long, dark play unfolds. There are no props, no fancy lighting. There is only the truth hiding in the shadows and the detective whose job it is to coax it into the light. You don't do it with threats or force, not with a man like Art Becker. You do it with understanding. You hold up a mirror, not to his crime, but to his pain, and you wait for him to finally recognize himself. Art Becker sat at the table in Interrogation Room 2, looking smaller and more fragile than ever under the harsh fluorescent lights. He blinked rapidly, his hands trembling slightly on the metal surface. Across from him sat Sergeant O'Malley, his partner Miller, standing quietly by the door. O'Malley didn't start with accusations. He started with the ball. "We found the pro shop in Lorraine, Art," O'Malley began, his voice calm and even. "Sully's. He remembered you. He remembered drilling the ball." Art swallowed hard, his eyes darting towards the mirror. "It was a gift," he mumbled, sticking to his original story. "For my boy, Jimmy, I was going to surprise him." "It's a beautiful ball, Art. Top of the line," O'Malley continued, nodding. "A father wants to give his son the best. Wants to teach him something. Spend time with him. I get that." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air. "But you never gave it to him, did you? Something happened." O'Malley slid a photograph across the table. It was a surveillance photo of Stan Kowalski and Sarah Becker, laughing as they left a motel together. It had been taken by a private investigator. The detectives had found the investigator's business card tucked away in Art's wallet. Art stared at the photo, and the carefully constructed dam of his denial crumbled. His shoulders slumped, and a dry sob escaped his throat. The fight went out of him completely. "He was laughing at me," Art whispered, his voice choked with a pain that was months old. "Everyone was, at the alley. I could feel them looking, whispering, the great Stan Kowalski with my wife. And me. I was just Artie. Good old, boring Artie." He confessed everything. The story was as sad and pathetic as O'Malley had imagined. He'd hired the PI to confirm his suspicions. The proof had shattered what little pride he had left. The rage and humiliation festered for weeks. He, the meticulous chemist, planned the murder with the same precision he applied to his work. He stole the potassium chloride from the lab. He knew Stan's routine. He knew he'd be at the alley on Tuesday night. "I waited for him in the parking lot," Art said, his voice now flat and devoid of emotion. "I told him we needed to talk. He was arrogant. He wasn't even sorry." Art had confronted him by his car, and in the ensuing argument, he'd jabbed the syringe into Stan's chest through his shirt. It was over in seconds. Stan had collapsed against his car, and Art had managed to get him inside and behind the wheel. "And the ball?" O'Malley asked softly. Art looked up, his eyes filled with a profound, heartbreaking sadness. "It was in the trunk of my car. I just picked it up that afternoon, the gift for Jimmy. In the panic, I didn't know what to do. My mind was racing. I thought maybe if I put it in his trunk it would confuse things, make it look like a deal gone wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. I just wanted to get away." He put his face in his hands. "I just wanted the humiliation to stop." The confession was complete. The king of Cavalier Lanes had been slain by the court jester. And so the investigation concluded. A confession was signed, a killer was charged, and the files were stamped, "Case closed." On paper, order was restored. But life isn't lived on paper. In the real world, a murder leaves behind ghosts. It leaves empty chairs at the dinner table, and it leaves an echo in a place of laughter and sport, an echo of betrayal and a reminder of the quiet desperation that can hide behind a neighbor's smile. The arrest of Art Becker sent a shockwave through the small suburban community. It wasn't the crime itself that was so stunning, but the perpetrator. Stan Kowalski, the flawed hero, and Art Becker, the invisible man, were now forever linked in a sordid, tragic story. There was no victory in it for anyone. Sarah Becker became a pariah, soon moving away to escape the whispers and stares. Her son, Jimmy, the boy who was meant to receive the brand-new Brunswick ball, was left to navigate a world where his father was a murderer and his mother was the cause. At Cavalier Lanes, the pinbusters tried to find a new anchor, but the heart had gone out of the team. The alley cats disbanded entirely. Tuesday nights were never quite the same. The easy camaraderie was replaced by a certain caution, a new awareness that the dramas of life didn't stop at the bowling alley door. Sergeant Frank O'Malley put the case file away. For him, it was another solved homicide, another life unraveled. But this one stuck with him. It wasn't the work of a hardened criminal or a monster. It was the result of a simple human equation. Pride minus dignity equals rage. He often thought of that brand new bowling ball, the catalyst for the investigation, a symbol of a father's hope, twisted by circumstance into a piece of evidence in a murder trial. It sat in an evidence locker, its gleaming surface a testament to a future that would never happen. In the end, it was never about strikes or spares, was it? It was about a quiet man's pride, shattered in the one place where he felt like a nobody and his rival felt like a king. Stan Kowalski's life was taken, and for what? A fleeting romance and a secret that couldn't be contained, no more than the smoke from that factory chimney on a cold Ohio morning. A sad, bitter story from a time we remember with fondness, reminding us that even in the most ordinary of worlds, the human heart can be the most dangerous crime scene of all.